Good afternoon, everybody. Kia ora tātou. Welcome to this webinar, which will mark the 29th International Day for People with Disabilities. 29 years of celebration. We have a really interesting and very packed webinar for the next 90 minutes. And I'm very grateful to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules today to join us. Thank you for that. In a moment, I will explain the logistics for how the webinar will work, how we'll run the session. But before I do, I wonder if I could ask Michael if he would introduce us with a karakia.
Tēnā koe neo, tēnā tātou, te whānau, hei mā te taki mai koutou tēnei o tātou whakāturanga. Māku hei whakatūwheretia e au tēnei o tātou kaupapa I te rā nei. Anō reira mihi atu nei ki au koutou katoa. Anō reira, e karakia mo te tīmatanga o tō tātou hui. Kia tau te rangi Māori e, orangi e tū iho nei, o papatūnuku e takoto nei, te tai au e awhi nei, ki runga I a tātou, ti hei mauri ora. May the peace of the sky above, of the earth below, and of all embracing universe, rest upon us all. Behold, there is life. Kia ora tātou, kia ora Neil.
Kia ora, Michael. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And we'll be hearing more from Michael later in the meeting as well. So just to let people know that this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available for future retrieval and to listen to. We have some accessibility features that I wanted to draw to your attention. We do have live captioning for those who would like to use that. And we also have sign language interpreters available as well and providing a superb service. We will be having a Q&A throughout the webinar. And if you have any questions related to the presentations that our speakers make, please feel free to submit those through the Q&A through the chat. We'll do our best to answer at least some of those questions. We've already had some in advance, so that's good too. But please do feel free to ask your own questions. And we have a team here who will capture those and we'll respond to those that we can. And any that we can't respond to, we will endeavour to respond to them on the website after the webinar is over. So it is definitely worthwhile you submitting your questions. The chat is open now. It's being moderated by Taryn Banks and by Chandra Harrison with assistance from Sue and Megan. So thank you to all of you for that. If anyone has any technical issues, then please let us know through the chat system, and we'll acknowledge that and see what we can do to help out. I'd like to acknowledge the four hosts, or co-hosts of today's webinar, the Access Alliance, Access Advisors, Accessibility TIC, and Tech for Good. And I'd like to first of all hand over to Chandra Harrison from the Access Advisors, who will just say a little bit about what your organisation does, Chandra. And then when you've finished, if you could choose one of the other three to hand over to, and we'll move through the four that way.
Thanks very much, Neil, and kia ora to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We have approximately 300 registrations, and that's just amazing. So it's really, really great collaboration here. Access Advisors is a digital accessibility consultancy that was initiated by the Blind Foundation approximately 2.5 to 3 years ago. And we work with New Zealand businesses and organisations and government to help them make their digital presence a little bit more accessible. And this is a passion for us, and it's something that we want to spread the word about. So that's why we sort of wanted to get together with some awesome people and deliver some stories here today. And I'm going to call on Taran from the Access Alliance to introduce herself.
Kia ora everybody, ko Taran Banks, takawinga. I'm from the Access Alliance. The Access Alliance is a movement comprised of 10 founding member organisations from the disability sector, and we're working with a range of supporting organisations. We have about 40 different supporting organisations from all types of organisations in the disability and not-for-profit space, and also a collection of business champions, businesses that are early adopters and embracing accessibility. And we have just over 7,000 individual supporters around the country as well. And so we represent and advocate for people with access needs, and collectively that we represent people with disabilities, seniors, carers of young children, people who are neurologically diverse, such as having dyslexia or other neurological differences, people who are temporarily injured, and migrants, and for people for whom English is a second language. And we are calling on government to introduce accessibility legislation to remove the systematic barriers that prevent 1 in 4 people in New Zealand from fully participating in our communities and our society. So thank you, and thank you all for joining today.
And do you want to choose someone to hand over to?
I'm going to hand over to Phil.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Phil from the Accessibility Tech. I do have to give you an apology for all the movement and everything that's going on, but I'm joining you from a place where there's a great cause going on, the Air New Zealand Disability Enterprise social enterprise market, and they're giving away some fantastic, not giving away, they're helping represent some amazing things from right across the disability sector. So I'm going to cut my video in a second, but before I do that, I just wanted to share with you a very quick bit about the Accessibility Tech. What we are is an organisation that works with other organisations to help them become more disability inclusive. That's really it in a nutshell. There's a lot more detail to it, but I'd invite you to go to the website and have a look. Really happy to be a part of today and to have been able to work on and bring in some of the speakers that you're going to hear from. I know that they're fantastic, and I wish you all the best with the rest of the session. And I look forward to being able to watch and concentrate on this when I get home. Thank you. And so finally, I will pass over to Tech for Good.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam from Tech for Good, and we are incredibly proud to be supporting this event and accessibility in New Zealand. Tech for Good is a network bringing together the social impact and tech sectors through our events and online community. We're about making those meaningful connections and helping drive change. You can find us on Meetup across all the social channels and on our website, techforgood.nz, and we'd love to see you there. Hope you enjoy today.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you to all the partners who have come together to host this meeting, this webinar, and it really is a great contribution to the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So the format of the webinar is really quite simple and straightforward, you'll be pleased to know. We will be hearing from 4 speakers, and they will give us a 10-minute presentation. After each of them, there'll be 5 minutes for a bit of Q&A. So that's where your questions come in, folks. We'll hear from speaker 1 for 10 minutes, then there'll be 5 minutes of Q&A for her, and then there will be the same for the rest of the 3 speakers. And then when they've completed, we'll hopefully have about 15-20 minutes left, where we'll open up the floor for a general discussion, questions and answers, which we'll put questions to all the panelists and see how that goes. It's a tight schedule. We don't have a lot of time, so I won't dwell on this for much longer. We'll understand the format by just doing it. So, without any further ado, let's get to the meat of the session and hear from our first speaker, which is Monique Leith from Monique Leith Consulting Limited. And just a few words about Monique before we hand the floor to her. Monique is a consultant, resource management planner, and a full member of the New Zealand Planning Institute. Following several years of public and private sector experience across all facets of resource and environmental planning, she co-founded Leith Consulting Limited, driven by her passion to support people and organisations who invest in the future of local communities. Since this time, the Leith Consulting team has grown to 10. In 2019, Monique attended the International Initiative for Disability Leadership in Washington, DC. That was in the days when we could travel, I suppose. Sponsored by leading disability support service provider Community Connections, who has its head office in Monique's hometown. So, Monique, I'd like to invite you to take the floor.
All right, Tanya.
Got me unmuted. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having me here today. It's great to be here amongst such fine company. A little bit about me. I'm hard of hearing, which I've gotten progressively worse over time. My hearing loss is hereditary. My mum is deaf. However, she had hearing parents, so the gene must have skipped a few generations. My hearing grandparents were big on communication, education, and speech, with my grandma being a kindergarten teacher. So my mum grew up in the mainstream education environment alongside her hard of hearing brother and her older brother who was hearing. That philosophy on education, communication, and speech has definitely trickled down for the generation to my upbringing, which was also through the mainstream education system. I guess when I look back now on my experiences as a young child in primary school, I was surrounded by such a supportive environment. The school principal, definitely, and all the teachers in particular, as well as my family, were incredibly supportive and enabling.
Oh dear, it looks like we've lost Monique.
Technology gremlins have caught us. Are we getting her back, or?
I'm not. Just 1 second there, Neil. Let's just see whether or not she does come back or not.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. No, it looks like she has paused. Oh wait.
Oh, and she's left the meeting, but she's coming back.
She's gone off.
I'm just sending her a message to see if we can get her back.
Okay.
Thanks, Taryn.
There, she's back. She's back.
Good job.
Well done, Monique.
Did you lose me for a second there?
We lost you, but you're back now, so that's really good. So feel free to continue when you're ready.
Did I lose you for a second there?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, I think it did. What was that too? Wow, I think I was going on about primary school. So I felt really, I think I was incredibly supported during primary school. But looking back on that experience, I hated the attention that was attributed to my hearing loss. And I hated it so much when, teachers asked my classmates to look at me when they were speaking to the class, or when they reserved places for me at the front of the room to assist with my hearing, or when they organised for a support teacher to assist me in the classroom. All of that, I loved it so much. I wanted the ground to swallow me up most days and just wanted to be treated the same as everyone else. I refused to be hearing aids. I just really didn't want to be any different. I know now, though, that without a shadow of doubt, that my supportive primary schooling was fundamental to my ability to interact with more able people and mainstream society in general. Moving through the college years, I found that support structure slipped away a little bit because they are more self-sufficient years. Support is there, but you have to ask for it. I had a wonderful dean and wonderful teachers, but I was personally in total denial about having hearing loss. I still refused to be hearing aids. I didn't want to portray any visible sign that I was different to my peers. I remember people asking me, why do you talk so funny? And telling them that my parents weren't from New Zealand. I came up with all sorts of sort of excuses and outright lies to explain away missing things and not hearing things, as opposed to just explaining that I can't hear. When I look back now, it just seems so ridiculous, right? So ridiculous. I really did choose the hard road. But those years were also expectation setters for me. My levelling of myself with my peers also levelled my expectations of myself. So, my God, it was exhausting. And then moving to choosing a career was a really interesting journey for me. I was quite realistic about what I could be successful at. Obviously, I was never going to be an amazing receptionist or, call centre operator or anything like that. But a lot of professions which operate high-speed environments where communication is critical, like emergency services or, AD at a hospital, was never going to work for me. Professions that require a lot of human interaction, like teaching or social sciences, also weren't going to work in my mind. I ended up at Maths University studying a Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning, and I don't think I even acknowledged my hearing loss on my application papers. At this stage, there was no support network, mainly because I chose to keep hiding my hearing loss. I missed out on a lot of social opportunities. It was much easier to isolate than to participate in those sorts of things. I chose a lot of extramural option papers, even though I lived really close to campus. I spent hours going through materials, distributed in class, PowerPoint presentations, notes, books, textbooks, at night, teaching myself what the teacher had been teaching us in class that day. It was a real struggle. It was 4 years of struggle, but I ended up graduating with honours. I think throughout uni, I worked as a community support worker, working with people who had grown up in institutions like the Kimberley Centre and Living, and were now living in the community. I went on to work for other agencies after university, supporting people to work independently in the community, before I sort of landed my first real professional job as a planner in local government. And those years in local government really mirrored more of my primary school years. My colleagues and general public customers were generally enabling. They were interested in my hearing loss, they were supportive. I had to be a lot more upfront about my limitations, and it was a safe place to do that. The corporate sector, where I worked later, was less enabling. I think expectations generally are a lot more ableist, and success looks like, neurotypical, highly abled people. And that's your baseline for measuring yourself against. So it's quite tough. And it's a less safe place to sort of be open about your limitations. So it certainly was for me. But as Neil sort of outlined just before, I went out on my own 2 years ago as an independent planner. And that very much felt like a bold, brave thing to do. I definitely couldn't have done it without my family support network, particularly that of my husband. Within a year, I found myself at Washington, DC, at the International Initiative for Disability Leadership. And that was a real honour to be sponsored to go there by Community Connection, who are one of New Zealand's leading disability support service providers.
Oh, have we lost Monique again?
Yes, it does look like
Yeah.
we have Neil.
Okay. Monique, if you can if you can hear us, what I'm going to do is save some questions for you and come back to you if we get a chance to do that. So please hang on in there. I was really enjoying your presentation, and I think everybody else was too.
Neil,
Yes.
she has returned. Are you there?
Monique.
You are there, Monique?
Oh, mine. Sorry, I think I cut out again.
You did.
Yeah.
You were just discussing the Washington seminar.
Yes. So Washington was amazing. It was a complete game changer. It was entered a world that was accessible everywhere. I went to a museum, and that have the information and Whale and all sorts of languages that have the mindset of the people there were just really accessible and really enabling. I had a friend who she's in a wheelchair, and her hotel had a hoist into their pool. That was the expectation. She'd never seen it before in her life. We had on the buses, public transport system, instead of just the audio voiceover of the next stop, they had captions showing what the next stop was. Little things like that. So at the conference, they had live transcribing everywhere, and for me, it was a real shock. It was the first time I've even seen it. But for the Americans there, it was what they were used to. It was the norm. It was really, really eye-opening for me. And I, at the end, I was sweating coming back to New Zealand because I realised how tiring it is to have to constantly plan for, overcoming that next hurdle and that next battle. But what I did come back with was a fire in my belly to help New Zealanders with disabilities to overcome some of those challenges that we face every day. I realised how far behind New Zealand was in the disability space. And then I know with lockdown this year was a real opportunity to embrace technology for me personally. I think we all experienced a lot of anxiety around lockdown to begin with, not being able to carry on with life in a normal way. When I need to meet with people, I have to make that extra effort. I have to go and visit them in person because I can't pick up the phone. So lockdown meant I couldn't even do that. I couldn't use the phone. I couldn't go and see them. Panic! It was really challenging. I was quite anxious. So how am I going to continue with my business? How am I going to continue with my staff, my customers, life in general? And so I was forced to explore technology that had been there all along, which my husband has been in my ear about, trying to encourage me to embrace for the last few years, and I've just not been interested in it. And so it was time to, have a look. And I picked up this Roger pen that I got when I got my hearing aid. And it's incredible. Bluetooth sound straight into my hearing aids, which are we hearing aids now? And discovering things like online meetings was really good. I thought it would be fun. I'd be able to upload people online, but that's just not the case. It's almost impossible. But I found Google Meet, which is like Zoom, but it has an auto caption feature, which is exceptional. It is absolutely exceptional. It comes in an app form and you can use it on your computer, and it has totally changed my life. Even now, customers, clients, staff, they will ring me on the app, and it opened up a whole level of communication for me. So discovering that has been good. I mean, Zoom is a big challenge. Zoom is the preferred platform. Today we've got a paid transcriber providing captions. It's not accessible to everyone. It does require paid subscriptions and that content for everything. So for me, doing professional courses, doing webinars, I have to really organise all of that if I want to attend something along with 300 other people. It's quite challenging. Whereas Google Meet is an automatic transcribing service, so it's absolutely fantastic. And I think, I know I can see you now trying to run me up here, so I'm just going to close this off by saying that I guess I'm really grateful that I have grown up in the technological age where, you know, communication and text messaging are the norm. And I think my life has definitely changed for the better due to enabling technology discovered. And I'm hugely optimistic for its uptake by mainstream society moving into the future. Thank you.
Monique, thank you so much for that, and I really appreciate the presentation you've just given, and that you got through some slight technical gremlins that we had, and it was definitely worth getting through those, so thank you for that. I do have one question which I'm going to hold back and ask you after we've had the other speakers, so that we can make sure we stay to time, but I will have one very specific question for you from what you've said, so I look forward to asking you that shortly. I wonder though if I could move on now to our next speaker, who is Rich Rowley. Now Rich, I have to say a big thank you to Rich, because Rich has joined us at very short notice, so thank you to you for that, Rich. Rich is an innovations coach and innovation advisor to Tech Future Labs. He is an expert in systems and design thinking, agile methodologies, and building innovation capability within teams and business. Rich specializes in helping organizations to differentiate problems, identify tools, methodologies, leadership approaches, and strategies. He enables them to adapt to new challenges and thrive in constantly changing environments. Rich brings a deep understanding of and experience in how to create and support transformative business value centered on people, maximize productivity, utilize available tools, and develop transferable skills for our digitally enabled world. Which helps organizations to develop strategic planning to unlock their potential of their neurodiverse employees, improving the health and well-being of their workforce, and increasing their capacity for innovation. So, Rich, I'm going to hand over to you, and you have 10 minutes starting from now.
Kia ora e te whānau. Ko hofta moanga ko Trent awa ko Atlante te moana no Ingarare hau, ke tamaki mokuru toku keanga, ko Ritrole hau, ko Ramanda toku Macau, toku wha mawa taonga, ara ko Reina, rata ko Stevie, ko Leo, ko Ruby, ko Rata Tanako, Ataka Tine, no re rata na tata kata, hi, I'm Rich. One of the many wonderful comorbidities that I have that accompanies my ADHD is anxiety. So I get incredibly nervous doing this. So bear with me. So a little bit about me. I've got quite an interesting journey. I didn't do particularly well at school. I was, and probably still am, a little bit of a naughty lad. Fell in with a bunch of people who my dad calls the wrong crowd when I was a kid. Had lots of fun and a misspent youth. My misspent youth lasted for quite a long time, 20 odd years, predominantly based around acid house music and everything that entailed, the clubs, the drugs. Education was always a bit of a struggle, a lot of a struggle actually. I could never work out why. As a young adult, I did get my act together. I managed to get a law degree. It wasn't a very good law degree. I did manage to get a job as a lawyer eventually. Hated that. Lots of it were a struggle, and I didn't like a lot of that job. I worked in a couple of big corporates for a few years. Eventually my misspent youth did pay off though, because through music I developed a love for computers, and in my 30s I went back to university to study computer science, and it was the first time ever I had any kind of academic success. So when I was a kid I had no engagement with anything, but I discovered that once I had an interest in something I could learn whatever I wanted to. So I now have a master's in computing. I became a teacher. That was kind of good and bad. I suppose kind of had a bit of a major life change around 7 years ago. I got asked to go and work for a small educational startup called the Mind Lab, set up by a lady called Frances Valentine, and that's been quite a profound transformational experience in my life. So the organization is kind of all about helping teachers change the pedagogy, how they do learning, so that kids, the skills that kids leave school with better align with what the world of business needs. So there's a lot of technology involved in that. The environment itself has been really profound for me. So I didn't find out I got ADHD until I was 42, and I found out by accident. And when I did, I was just really pretty embarrassed about it actually, because when you start reading about it, it's not that great news. You know, I've got a deficit and a disorder, and I've got comorbidities. So it wasn't anything I was particularly proud of, but it explained why certain things had always been challenging for me. But when I went to work at the Mind Lab, it was a startup, so we built our own culture from scratch, and we do this really unusual thing there. We collaborate, which is beautifully simple but profoundly hard to do in organizations, because you need psychological safety, and it's the only organization I've ever experienced where it was okay to not be good at things and to not have to pretend. And I've got a whole range of stuff that I'm not good at. And, you know, the beautiful thing is, like, where I've got big gaps, other beautifully different people at work have got strengths. So we collaborate and work, fill in for each other. I suppose even though I had that work environment for a long time, I wasn't totally honest about myself because of my perceptions about my differences. Because of some life stuff, one day I went to work and I ended up having to tell somebody, and I told my friend Melissa, who's our founder's PA, and I told her all about my differences, and she kept telling me that I needed to tell Francis. And one day she basically forced me in front of Francis and said, Richard needs to tell you something. And I remember telling her all about my ADHD, and Francis just first thing she said was, oh, I knew. And I was thinking, oh damn, thought I was better at hiding it than that. But she said, I knew you were different, and that's why I want you to work for me. And that was really quite a profound thing, because it really flipped how I see my diversity. I'd never thought of it as having any value for organizations before that point. Next thing she said was, what do you need me to do to help? And the answer to that was wonderfully nothing, because I already had a nice inclusive work environment. So I'm here to talk about kind of views on technology, which I have a very strange relationship with technology. I love technology. I loved when I got into computing the very fact that I could have a job that involved computers, because it meant that I could spend all day at work and really not have to talk to anybody or see anybody. So I really liked it from that perspective. I don't do those kind of jobs anymore. So I do basically write and develop and facilitate workshops and work on some master's programs, which is more about people and stuff. But the organization that I work for uses a lot of technology tools, and some I find helpful, some I find incredibly problematic. So I'm a big fan of really simple technology. And technology that just does what I need it to do without bells and whistles on. I'm quite a big fan of the Google suite of products, because it's pretty minimalist. And a lot of technology I use just to help myself a little bit with organization, because that's like it's the bit of my brain that doesn't work so well. So technology kind of helps me as much as possible to fill in that. But at work, we've got lots of different tech tools that we use. I'm really fortunate that I'm not actually expected to use them, which is really nice, because a lot of the tools that we use, whilst I appreciate how good they are and how they work for most people, for me, they're incredibly problematic. I don't feel that I have an attention deficit. I've just got an abundance of attention. I just struggle with controlling where it goes. And some of the tools that we use are like black holes for my attention, so it's I can open it up and basically spend 8 hours just going down rabbit holes of nothingness and not producing anything, because I just get distracted by the tools themselves. So I think the thing that I'm profoundly grateful for at work is that they do make an effort, and my challenges around that. And if I explain how these tools are kind of counterproductive to me being productive, that they don't expect me just to use them for the sake of using them. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. And it's taught me a lot about, I love the fact that people are different, and a big part of what I do is helping organizations leverage the power of that, but also understand that you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach in anything that you do, even around technology. It's not all technology is equal. Some technology works better for some people, it doesn't for others. A lot of people love the Microsoft environment, and it's incredibly functional, got so much, but once again, it's just got so much stuff that distracts me and keeps me producing stuff for me is always a bit of a challenge anyway. So anything that distracts, not a good thing. So yeah, simple stuff works best for me. And I suppose, yeah, that's it really. So it's everybody understand differences and find out what works for them. what I have actually discovered that works for me better than any technology is actually having people to support me and fill in for my weaknesses. It's as good as Google Calendar is. I can still manage to miss meetings. You know, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll look at my calendar and know what I've got to do for the day. And 10 minutes before a meeting, I'll get an alert saying you've got a meeting. And then somebody will flash me a message on WhatsApp and I'll talk to them. And the next thing I know, it's an hour later and I've totally missed the meeting. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword like anything, but that's it. That's me, I suppose. How am I doing for time? Have I got longer?
Doing great. Yeah, thank you for that. I actually have one question to you arising from what you've said, if that's all right. And there may even be questions coming in on the chat. I don't know, but let's try this one first, because we did have a question from. We asked people in advance of when they were registering if they could submit questions as well, and some people did. And one question we got, which I think is quite relevant to what you've been talking about, was because you've discussed the fact that you're in an environment right now which is very supportive, but that there are other times when you have felt overwhelmed, maybe a word. What kind of action or comments or support can people or should people give, do you think, to people with any hidden disabilities, but feel free to think in your particular situation, on an everyday basis that makes you feel more included and more welcomed?
Well, that's a very big question.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, and it's quite difficult to answer. So, I mean, I suppose the thing that I'm the most profoundly grateful for in the organisation that I've worked for a while now is that I have the ability every day to go to work and be myself. That they don't necessarily have to understand that, but they try the best to support me. And it's just that they don't see my difference as a negative, although I do come with some negatives. You know, I can be quite a challenging person to understand and to work with, but they make an effort and they support me as much as possible. I think for organizations, the big thing is actually changing the perception, particularly of neurodiverse people. It's everything seen as a problem or a challenge, but it's like we do come with problems or challenges, but we also come with amazing opportunities. And so the very best thing for me was, it's hard to describe what it was like once I'd told my boss Francis about it. It was like somebody had just released a little pressure valve, and it was just like a bit of pressure was gone that I never really knew was there. And so just that freedom to talk. So actually, I think that's the main thing. That's the starting point for any organization, just actually making it okay for employees to have that conversation and say, look, you know, this is me on the autistic spectrum, you know, Tourette's, whatever beautiful neurodiversity you've got. It's just that ability to be able to say, this is me, and then go from there, work on getting a supportive environment. So I think that was the most profound thing that's made a difference. There's lots of work to do. One of my projects that I'm launching next year is actually focused on this, helping organisations to better understand the neurodiverse employees and have a more supportive environment. But it's going to be a long road to kind of change all of that. But
Neil, just to interrupt for one moment, please. There is one question that's come through for Rich.
Go ahead.
Rich, somebody has asked, Kay has asked, you've currently got a successful career, but what advice would you have for your younger or for other younger neurodiverse people who haven't yet found their niche?
Don't sweat it if you're not great at school. I think schools are very unusual environments, and the people who thrive in school, I think they're quite weirdly beautiful and different. That's a very unusual skill set to be able to thrive in that environment, because it's not a natural environment at all. So I think that's the first thing. Everybody that I know, I've got 4 children. 3 of them are beautifully neurodiverse. 1 of them's more on the neurotypical side. And I think like when I think about in general, I think more neurotypical people tend to have strengths and weaknesses. Neurodiverse people have greater strengths and greater weaknesses. And I think the thing is being okay with that, not worrying too much about what your weaknesses are, but actually really trying to discover what those beautiful things are that you're great at. And I'm really fortunate. I've kind of just fell into a space where my strengths are valued. I see the world differently, and that's the good thing. I think one of the things about technology is, as well, my perspective on technology is obviously technology's kind of getting better and better and replacing a lot of jobs that people do at the moment. And I think a lot of those jobs are kind of sort of structured, logical process jobs, because that's what technology is good at. And that's kind of what the school system outputs, people who are great at doing those kind of roles. I've got a brain that doesn't like that and enjoy that. It thinks weirdly and differently and oddly and in ways that computers don't. So I think the future's incredibly bright for anybody who is neurodiverse. Because of that, we think differently, and that adds value to organizations, particularly in terms of innovation, solving problems. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know, it's difficult. The world's designed by neurotypical people for neurotypical people at the moment. But my advice is just kind of find and celebrate your strengths, and you will find somewhere that you can fit in eventually. And yeah, somewhere that supports you for who you are.
Thank you so much, Rich. I totally endorse that. And again, thank you for stepping in to join us today. Really appreciate it. And stay on the line, because there will be more questions towards the end of the webinar. And that's just a reminder to everyone. Thank you for to the person who contributed that last question. Keep them coming, folks. Keep adding questions that you wish to ask. We will either ask them to the speakers as they come to the end of their presentation, or we will ask them in the last quarter of an hour or so of the webinar as best we can. So keep those questions coming. So I'm moving on to our third speaker now, who is Michael Nera. Michael has made significant contributions for improving mental health services and suicide prevention strategies and activities for Maori across Aotearoa, New Zealand. He is recognised in the 100 Maori leaders alongside Sir Mason Dury and Dame Tariana Turie, to name just a few. As a sought-after keynote speaker, Michael was part of an Indigenous Suicide Prevention Dialogue panel at the 15th World Congress on Public Health Conference in Melbourne. He has also travelled to Indigenous nations to present on Maori and Indigenous suicide prevention. In 2016, Michael was one of the project leaders for the inaugural World Indigenous Suicide Prevention Conference and Indigenous Youth Summit in Rotorua. He led the rollout of conference recommendations, in particular the Turamara Declaration, which is recognised by Indigenous nations globally. Michael, over to you. Your 10 minutes begins now.
Tēnā tātou, tēnā koe Neil, Monique, Lenine and Richard. Nice to be on the panel with you today. To our interpreters and to our partners, mihi atu nei kia koutou. Greetings to you all. To those who are at home who are watching, greetings to you as well. I thought I'd write a bit of a story about what it was like when I was growing up. Yeah, I'll begin now. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Do you know what I'm going through? Do you know what I'm feeling? Do you really know me? Do you really know me? In my mid-20s, I suffered. There are days where I would scream inside, but no one heard me. There were days when I hid it, but had to make a living, so fell out of bed each day. There were days where it was just so hard, so I pulled a sickie. Not one time, but many times. There were days when I wanted it all to end, but drowned my sorrows in a bottle of Lion Red. But every day during that time, I faked it. I faked what I was going through, but I continued to smile, laugh, empathize, and mix in as an integral part of the team. Even more of a burden was that I also belonged to an iwi, hapu, whānau, and community. We're mingling and striving toward a common goal as part of your customary right and as part of your human right. But no one knew. No one really knows. Kia ora everyone. My name is Michael Naira, and I am a male, and I am Māori, and I suffered from depression in my mid-20s to the point of nearly ending it all. You see, my whānau, my colleagues, my friends, and my community didn't know. They saw it as a tweak in my mood, or he's just having a bad day. I was different to how I normally acted. You know, the outgoing, caring, and of course, humorous Michael. But no one asked me if I was okay. No one said, "Can I help you?" And no one walked beside me. When I reached out for help, the help was based on someone else's notion of working with all New Zealanders. But I'm Māori, and to be honest, I just don't understand you. You might say, "What about your whānau?" Well, I didn't want to hurt them anymore than I did. I was already a burden on them. So I suffered alone, I suffered in silence, and I suffered in a bottle called Lion Red. 1 in 5 New Zealanders live with mental illness and or addiction each year. Nearly 1 in 4 New Zealand adults experience poor mental health. 1 in 3 Māori and 1 in 4 Pacific suffer from mental illness or addiction. Even though Māori make up 16% of the population, 28% of all mental health users are Māori. Māori are twice as likely to die by suicide than non-Māori. Between 10 to 35% of workers experience workplace bullying. New Zealand has the 3rd highest rates of school bullying out of 36 OECD countries. Students who are frequently bullied avoid going to school and suffer from depressive symptoms or attempt to take their life. So my question is, do you really know? Do you really know the people around you? The digital world is meant to connect us, but we are more disconnected than ever. The misuse and abuse of social media, the flippant and derogatory comments made in the media about mental distress, racist remarks, the absence of culturally appropriate material, and the exclusive nature of those with invisible disabilities and marginalised communities. All these things create either mental distress or cause more harm to those who are experiencing daily distress. But I've also seen the positive side of mental health across a number of digital platforms, including Māori and Pacific Mental Health, depression.org, Farm Strong, Like Minds Like Mine, Open Minds, to name a few. It's now the right time to include positive mental health across health, education, social justice, community, and the corporate sector. That being said, my name is Michael Naira. I am in my late 40s. I am Māori. I am male. And I experience racism every day. Am I a chronic sufferer of depression? No. But am I at risk? Yes, I am. So do you really know me? Nō reira, tēnei ake te mihi ki a koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe, Michael. Thank you so much. Kia ora. I think that was a very powerful presentation. Thank you so much. And I'm going to, in a moment, I'm going to ask my colleagues if we have any questions from the floor that's come through on the chat. I'd just like to ask you, if I may, with the experience of the pandemic in 2020 and the lockdown and the restrictions that we've had, did you find isolation to be a problem? And if so, what were your strategies for navigating that?
Michael, do you have a response there?
Yes. Sorry, I'm still coming down. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Of course. So with the experiences that 2020 has brought us in terms of the pandemic and the lockdown and the restrictions that have been imposed and then gradually released, did you find, and do people that you have spoken with find that there was more or less isolation during that time, and what strategies did you use to navigate that?
That's a great question. In particular for Māori communities, Māori were more disconnected than ever, specifically with the bubble scenario where Māori are a collective whānau, a communal group, and the bubble scenario actually separated our whānau. We were separated from our whānau when we grieved for our loved ones that we lost, who died during COVID. And so we had to find a different way of creating a connection using digital means. And so many Māori around the country used the digital devices to hold their tangi or their funerals online. They used their digital settings for holding nightly karakia or prayer sessions. They used the digital sessions for putting across te reo Māori or the language. They used the digital settings to ensure that we were connecting with our elders as well, knowing that with COVID around and the impacts of COVID on our elders, it was important that we as Māori stayed away from them. So the downside to that, in terms of Māori children, is that the schools went to a digital settings for all schools around the country. The difficulties with Māori is that we didn't have the means to purchase a computer, to purchase iPads, so we were already in a disadvantaged state. So we had to really push for kura kaupapa Māori, Māori immersed schools, for koanga reo, to have access to these digital advices. But just to end, Neil, and just let someone else have a go. Māori were very innovative innovation during that time, and we knew that we needed to remain connected, not only in our country but around the world. So we made the digital scene work for us. Reira, tēnā tātou.
Kia ora, Michael. Thank you so much. Before we move on, are there any questions from the chat at all?
There are indeed, Neil.
Would you like to choose one?
Well, I can absolutely choose one. What I will say just before we move on, though, is that there are a lot of questions, and what we will do is that we will answer those questions either online, or we will do some responses later on if we haven't got to your question yet. So, Michael, if you have one more minute, we've got quite a few other questions in here for you, but one of them here is, hang on a second. So, kia ora, Michael, mihi to your kōrero regarding awhai being based on someone else's notion of working with all New Zealanders, which we are all seeing from primary mental health services, which can be inaccessible to our whānau. How can we tautoko advocacy efforts? Do you have a second to answer that one for us?
Yeah, sure. I think we've got a large number of people on this webinar today, from those who are in the banking industries, those that are working in the private sector, those in the community sector. Well, just to keep it really short and really simple, it's important that we involve Māori in co-designing and co-developing anything that we do with regards to supporting Māori, Pacifica and any other culture, any other marginalised group, albeit rainbow communities, albeit the migrant communities as well. We have a responsibility to all New Zealanders, but we have a specific responsibility to particular communities who are marginalised or who are excluded from the digital world. The other thing I'd like to suggest to everyone is that it's always worth having those with lived experience sit beside you when you're planning, when you're developing anything. Because to make anything work in the digital world, it's got to work for them, it's got to work for us, and it's got to work for everyone. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Michael. Thank you once again. So we will now move, if we may, to our final speaker, who is Lineen Allen. Lineen is the Deafblind Services Coordinator for Blind Low Vision New Zealand and creator of Deaf Positive Aotearoa Facebook group. When COVID-19 forced New Zealand into lockdown earlier this year, Lineen sprang into action. With her extensive background in mental health, she knew the impact lockdown could have on the deaf community. Lineen harnessed the power of digital resources to create a highly successful online community for deaf New Zealand Sign Language users. It has proved so popular that it is set to become a permanent resource for NZSL using New Zealanders. So I would like to hand the floor to Lineen, and Lineen, your 10 minutes begins now. Thank you.
Interpreters microphones ready. Go ahead, Lini. Kia ora tātou katoa. Thank you very much for inviting me to be involved in this special International Day for People with Disabilities. It's a great honour. It's very nice to see Monique, Michael and Richard, co-panelists, sharing our experiences. I am affiliated to Ngāti Kahungunu as a Māori woman. And in my working life, I have supported the deaf community in mental health organisations for 20 years. Previously, a deaf mental health organisation was established in Wellington, which has since sadly been shut down. And I'm working currently in a hearing school's deaf unit in primary schooling, in mainstreaming. And I've experienced the mainstreaming schooling system myself. I can definitely relate to the experiences of especially Michael and Monique. I had great social times with my schoolmates in school, but in a similar way that Māori were not allowed to speak Māori at school previously, so were sign language users not only prevented from speaking sign language at school, but we were also punished for doing so. So in the mainstream schooling system, I was the only deaf person and only deaf student in my class. And at that time, there were no interpreters available. And so I would rely on a classmate to support me in the classroom in my learning. I went to school, deaf school in Christchurch is where I discovered my deaf identity. And it was amazing to meet other deaf students just like me with whom I could communicate using New Zealand Sign Language. It was just wonderful. I left school and had a variety of jobs in mental health, as I mentioned, working in education, working with disability organisations, a variety of which. And I had a lot of challenges in my working life, lots of barriers. As I mentioned before, not only was there a lack of access to interpreters, but technology such as Facebook and Zoom was not available to us. It's just been amazing to have that same access, real-time access for the deaf community. Facebook has been incredibly popular as a way that deaf people can connect with their friends, family and whānau, not only around New Zealand, but overseas and around the world. Deaf people's uptake has been amazing, especially for those who have been isolated with their mental health issues. For tangata turi, those Māori deaf, Facebook and the digital platform has been amazing at making their lives more inclusive. Moving on to talk about the lockdown, it was a huge impact on the deaf community who didn't understand for a start what coronavirus was, what a lockdown meant, and what the impacts were on the deaf community. Some deaf people whose preferred and first language is sign language didn't have the access to the information because of their lack of literacy skills to find out through the English and text-based world as to what was going on. So I had a lot of inquiries from people as to what was going on, how do we behave, what do we do? And so I had a lot of explaining to do. I made videos, I posted them on Facebook, and there was a lot of activities going on, sharing information. I provided counselling, social workers for any deaf person who needed it, made sure that those connections were made for those people in the rural areas and small communities. And our Facebook group had an ongoing and positive effect for the NZSL users, which continues until today. One of the most amazing things with technology is that we have access to interpreters. You will have seen our fantastic interpreting team working with our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. The recent election, you will have seen interpreters during the leaders' debate. It was available for us, and it was absolutely amazing. Deaf people engaged in the political scene, in the political debate. It was really, really amazing. Now, deaf people can access a lot of more technology, such as text. There's the New Zealand relay services. There are video interpreting services, and deaf people can access that now through the amazing technology that's available. For some, there are some negative impacts from lockdown. An example would be those who had no resources available for having Wi-Fi devices compatible to the internet, and for those rural and isolated deaf people. So I think maybe that's about all from me.
Thank you very much for that, Lineen. That's much appreciated. Do we have any questions from the chat? Chandra, over to you.
Hi. So we do have one here that's kind of around language, which in this instance is relevant. Somebody has asked, what can we do in getting views of people who have difficulties with language? Who can hear and see but struggle not only with reading and writing, but also with understanding what is said and finding the words to say. In this instance, the question is around due to neurological conditions, but I also think that relates here as well, Lineen, to people whose first language is NZSL.
Sorry. Well, the reason why deaf people's literacy is often very low is generally linked to their education. Schools spent a lot of time historically on teaching people how to speak and how to lip read. So a lot of education wasn't accessed. And deaf people have historically been really behind in their reading, writing, and general literacy. Sign language is by far the most popular medium. When using English, often they find that they have to use, have to go brief. They can't fully express themselves, and often that's the same with understanding English. Historically, that has been the case. Now things have changed. We have deaf units in schools, we have deaf teachers, we have New Zealand Sign Language tutors. So for deaf people, times have changed. Things are much more accessible because they're coming through their first language. But historically, there was very little access to their natural language. They were all hearing teachers. The theory of education for deaf people was oralism, which was for a 100-year gap between 1880 to 1980. So the focus was on speech and learning to lip read, and that was detrimental. So times have changed. And there are a lot more deaf teachers and sign language tutors out there.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank the four speakers for a number of things. One, providing all of us with some really fascinating insights into your lives and your experiences. And I think kind of setting the scene really for what I hope will be a chance for a bit of a discussion in the last 10 minutes or so of our time together. And an amazing achievement really of folks keeping to time. It's so hard to do when you're presenting in situations like this, and everyone's done a really good job and made my job so much easier, so thank you for that. I'm going to ask our question capturers again, because I want to move now to sort of general questions, if I may. There may be people that have been putting questions in, and this is a chance for us now to try and field some of those. And what we'll do is we'll see what questions we have, and we will ask either if they're directed to specific panel members, that's okay, or if they're just general, we might ask all four panel members to say a few words if there's time to do that. So Chandra or Taran, would either of you like to suggest some questions that have come in through the chat?
Sure. Now, these are questions that came through to us from attendees before the session, which is great. Lots of really meaty questions. I've got one here that, you know, if you want to answer, please just let us know. Question is, can you tell us if you were to prioritise any particular access needs with regards to digital technology, what would you say, what would you choose as the biggest need that you have personally?
I'm going to nominate Monique to begin with that one, begin responding to that one, if that's all right. So Monique, I'm going to ask you if you could respond to that.
That's a really good question. I guess from my personal experience and noting the diverse group that have joined us today, it would be really good to see organisations give people an alternative to calling them. So if you've missed your appointment, please call us. Or if you've got any feedback, please call us. Because 1 in 6 New Zealanders have a hearing loss and they're unlikely to give you feedback or perhaps change their appointment or whatever it is. So it would be really good to see organisations provide a text message number or an email address or an instant message. It's a really, really simple thing to do, but I think that would be quite a widespread way of having accessible communication between people with different needs and businesses.
Brilliant, thank you. That's a really good one. Rich, can I ask you the same question? Chandra, would you just read out the question again for those who may have missed it first time?
Of course, I've scrolled past it, but that's okay. Rich, I think the question goes along the lines of, for you, what is the biggest technological access need that you have?
Help with writing. Writing's just torture. It always has been. It's hard to explain, but like my brain goes at 1,000 miles an hour. It's like my pen is like 2 miles an hour. My fingers maybe 10. Talking's really the only thing I'm good at, which is another reason why I really like Google products. I think, you know, just the ability to talk and it gets it pretty much right all the time and captures what I'm thinking and saying. So, and also just that organizational stuff where what I'm supposed to be doing at certain times of the day, because I can't organize myself at all. So those are sort of my biggest needs. Does tech totally meet that at the moment? No, because I'm also really good at ignoring reminders on my phone and on my computer. or just getting absorbed in something totally different. And that's the thing, you know. It's like I'm struggling with this because there's so much interesting stuff going on the screen at the moment. Just to focus my attention on one thing is challenging. So I don't know. I don't think tech's really totally the solution for me, but certainly as it keeps getting better, it helps me in lots of aspects of my life. So it's good. What I do need, I always lose my keys. If like somebody can make some techie keys that I'd never go missing, that would just be awesome.
There you go. That's it. You put it out there now. So let's see what comes back from that. Michael, can we ask you the same question? What technical or digital, single digital or technical advancement would be good for you?
No, I think the main thing I'd like to, you know, if I had a wish list, was to look at digital poverty across Māori communities in particular. Pacific communities is the other group of whānau I'd like to look at as well, ensuring that our children, our whānau, our kaumātua, our elders all have access to digital means. But I'd also like to tie this in with the language question, you know, and probably use today as an example. I know we've got our interpreters online, our sign language interpreters. We've got our subtitles zooming across the screen, but are we catering for the Māori language? Are we catering for Pacific languages and Asian languages as well? So whilst we think we're feeling inclusive, maybe we're excluding people from this webinar as an example. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Michael. Thank you. And to Lenine, same question to you. Single digital or technical thing that you would highlight?
So for me, I can't pick one. There is everything. And you have to remember that, of course, everyone has different needs. Everyone is different. So I take everything, if I'm being honest. You know, anything technologically that works for our community and that works for individuals is awesome. And I'd like to say that there's not enough recording technology for deaf blind. I found out that that's one area, sort of resources for deaf blind people is something that we really need to work on and improve. So that's my answer. I'm going to take everything.
I love it when people are greedy. That's brilliant. Thank
Neil,
you.
Thank you. I've got another one here that I think is really awesome. But before I do that, Michael, I'd like to, acknowledge that yes, you're absolutely right. That inclusivity is something that we strive for, but is actually very difficult to achieve because we always want to do as much as we possibly can, but there's always that question around how far can we go? But I hear you, and we will do better. But the question that I have for you all, again, is what do you think about artificial intelligence and the artificial intelligence applications and how this might help in access? So the question specifically is, the artificial intelligence uses historical data which can be biased against people living with disabilities. What's your thoughts on artificial intelligence, guys?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit and go back the way we came. So, Lenine, if I may drop that on you to start with.
Oh, I thought I was coming up last. I might need a minute to think about that. I want to be really, really careful with my words. So,
okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course it is. We'll come back to you.
I'm okay to have a quick answer to that,
Go
Neil.
for it, Rich. Go for it.
I mean, I'm really fortunate to work in a space where we explore emerging disruptive technologies, and I basically get to these amazing candidates who explore these things and teach me about it. So it's pretty cool. So yes, these technologies will help. That bias thing, all algorithms are biased at the moment. It's a big emerging thing in the field of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Will we ever get rid of it? I'm not sure, because people are biased and like we write the algorithms. So, you know, actually getting rid of those biases is incredibly challenging, but at least the conversation's there and it's started. Will it get better? Yes, it will. Will we screw things up? Yes, we will. But, you know, the progression of technologies, over time it gets better. So it will help. It will come with biases. We will spot them quicker and hopefully get rid of them quicker as well.
Thanks for that. Michael, what's your thoughts?
I wouldn't have a clue what that is. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
All I know is about data sovereignty for Indigenous peoples to ensure that when many companies around the country are collecting data on Māori and then producing our stories, I think Māori need to be involved in telling those stories and what it means, what that data means to Māori, how it can help our people in a more positive way. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, thank you. And Monique, have you any thoughts on this question?
I think it's a really good question. I mean, I think that there's a bigger context in which this question can be placed. I am incredibly optimistic about artificial intelligence because I think it will play a huge role in people with hearing loss and who are deaf. Absolutely, as a support network for people with disabilities, particularly people with hearing loss in the future. I would love to see our children, our deaf and hard of hearing children, having the best access to technology, The context in which that is based is that we are having more powerful discussions as a society around access and inclusion. It's becoming a lot more common practice, and while we are quite far behind other countries, we are calling, our voices are being heard. And so that, coupled with advances in AI, I am really optimistic that some of those biases will be worked on and development of technology will be done in a meaningful and inclusive way for everyone in New Zealand.
Thanks, Monique. And Lyneen, any thoughts?
I absolutely agree with Monique. And I have to say that for me, I really want to see more disabled people being included in the research and the groundwork, because we see a lot of creativity without the people who have the lived experience and skills. So it's really important for all of us to be involved in those discussions. We're the experts, we have the skills, and we can advise. So our voice needs to be listened to rather than them making decisions for us. I can't agree with that.
Thank you so much, Lyneen. Thank you, Mike.
I hope that answers the question.
Yes, indeed, it does. Thank you. So
Neil,
thank you.
Sorry, Neil, I'm going to interrupt. Just aware of the time that we've had.
I know, that's why I want to bring us to an end. I would like to end by I've got about a minute to get us out, but I just want to thank a few people, if I may, and also just to comment that there are so many takeaways as a result of the corridor we've had today, and thank you so much for everyone's contribution, whether you were speaking, whether you were questioning. But you know what? It always comes back to the same thing, which is great in my view, which is nothing without us nothing about us without us. And we need to be involved in discussions about things that affect us as disabled people. Folks, this has been a fantastic webinar. I've really appreciated your time. I want to thank the 4 partner hosts, Access Advisors, Access Alliance, Accessibility TIC, and Tech for Good. I want to thank Chandra and Taryn for fielding the questions. I want to give a big thank you to Sue for keeping the whole thing running very smoothly over the last few weeks, and especially today. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, which none of you will ever appreciate because you haven't seen it, but honestly, it's been amazing. So thanks for that, Sue. I want to thank the sign language interpreters, and I want to thank the caption providers. I'd like to say thank you to the panelists, to Monique and Rich and Michael and Lenine. But most of all, I'd like to thank all of you in the audience for joining us today. It's been a great webinar, and have a great day. Thank you.
One second. Yes, Michael, could we ask you to close the webinar with a karakia?
Yes.
And before you do, I'd also like to thank Neil for your facilitation. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Mi atu nei kia koe, Neil. Mo tō tautoko kia mātou I te ahi nei. Ko koe te tino tōhungo mo tēnei o tātou kaupapa. No reira, mi atu nei kia koe. Kia tātou e tau nei ngā kai kōrero, ngā whānau kei muri I tēnei o tātou Zoom. No reira, mi atu nei kia koutou katoa. Mi atu nei kia tātou. Ngā te hunga, ngā hunga mātakitaki mai tēnā koutou. Anō reira, me karakia tātou, e io I ngā tua ka karakia atu mātou kia koutou kia tukua mai te korowai arawa kei rungi I a mātou katoa mo tēnei hui, ake tonu atu mene. Ka pai, ka kite anō.
Thanks everybody. Ka kite.
Go well.